Right.
Well, look, there we are.
We are live.
Oh, we are definitely live now. I mean, look at that.
Boy, this is a motley crew if I've ever
Right?
seen one.
Move in a bit, Tony. You're just
Move in.
in, right? Hey,
Okay.
you know, we got you as the star of the show, so we need to.
No, you're the star of the show, man. We're just
Uh,
dancing on your
I
stage.
just happen
Yeah.
to be in the middle.
So we want to welcome everybody to.
We're live.
We're live.
The
We're live.
source of all of our
No, we're
knowledge.
bantering. And look, I'm wearing my DD speech up. DD speech up. DD speech up. DD speech up.
That's right. I can't do that.
I can't either. It's the first time I ever tried it. I was afraid I'd have a stroke halfway through the second one.
Okay. Do we know what we're going to kick off with this subject?
Well, first of all, I want to welcome Uncle Tony here to North Carolina.
It is great to be here. It is absolutely great to be here.
North
The
Carolina.
David
know-
Lazar.
I've known this guy by name for as long as I can remember. You know, this is the first time we met, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the magazine days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like almost 40 years.
It's got to be.
Well,
I mean,
well, we never met face to
wait,
face.
wait, wait, wait.
We're experienced.
Yeah.
We're very, very experienced.
Been around the block.
Yes, a time or two.
So want to say hey to everyone who's in the chat.
Hello,
Thank you.
everybody in the chat.
So, but tonight's a pretty big night. What did you bring us?
I brought you the makings for Project Mission Impossible.
That is awesome.
So we brought down
That
a
is
block.
scary.
Why? You're, come on.
We got the carburetor here.
Well,
Right.
it's more of a pimple than a carburetor, really.
We got to make horsepower through this.
Take it up to the camera.
Oh, they can see it.
285 CFM worth of DVD goodness. We're gonna make
Oh, that's 285 at 3 inches of mercury.
Yeah.
Right? At 1.5, which is what we use for 4 barrels, it's going to be about 40% less.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my good. So this carb here is about 190 CFM.
rated at a 4-barrel level.
Yeah, rated on 4 barrel. Right? Let me tell you, the Venturi area on an 850 mini carburetor is bigger than this. And this has got to feed 318 inches as opposed to a mini carburetor feeding about 40 cubic inches.
Okay, but there are things that can be done with this.
Oh,
Yeah, we could scrap it.
yeah.
Or,
Well, we've been talking about some tricks that we can do with making a monoblade.
I thought about that. I didn't know if you wanted to go that far.
Well,
But I
that's
think
the
we're
thing.
going to do the. Notice I said, I think we are. I think Andy and I are going to do the carburetor twice. We're going to do some simple mods,
Okay.
right? And then we're going to get another carburetor and just
go crazy.
absolutely, yeah. We're going to.
Well, I mean, it's a really restrictive top on this.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, imagine
Well,
if you
that's
would
coming off.
trim this whole thing
Yes.
down just right
Yeah.
to the Venturi, and then
Make a
You
velocity
blend
stack.
We'll have to start this engine by pumping the gas pedal,
oh yeah, that's.
right? So like it's a Weber.
But I was hoping to make 275, 280, and you
Oh.
said no.
We're going
320.
We're
so-
going to be really upset if that's all we make.
You know what the cool part about this is, and I don't know if people put it together, but we're actually going to be making more power than a 340 did stock.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's impressive.
Well, the 340, they rated them. I think they stopped
underrated
taking the, yeah,
Yeah.
they stopped taking the numbers at like 4,600, but it actually went a bit further than that. And I think they dyno an honest 68 to 70, 71, 340.
With the 4-speed cam?
Yeah, well, the 68 was the only one that had the cam that was different.
Yeah.
The other ones had the same cam as the 360, related to
Yeah.
360. But they cut the rating at like 4,400 or 4,600, but it didn't really start making the magic until about 5,051.
Right.
So an honest stock 340 from that era is probably about what we're expecting to get from this one.
Yeah. It's going to be
Can
fun.
I ask you a question here? And I need to address this to the people that are going to be following
Okay.
this, right? I want to do some crankshaft modifications, which will increase the horsepower by virtue of the bottom end and loosen its power because
Sure.
of
Yeah.
windage. But that's going to mean it's got to be rebalanced, right?
Okay.
Now, so is that okay that we have a balance job in the budget for this engine?
Yes, of course.
What's the minimum budget that we
What?
should have?
Yes. If
I don't know.
Because just to replacement of incidentals like gaskets, and we're gonna have to buy pistons, we know that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Could we do this for, say, and this is my best guess, maybe for $12.50?
Maybe less.
Does that sound
Maybe
like
less.
I think it's probably about $1,000.
Yeah,
right?
I think it'd be about
Okay.
$1,000.
So what we'll have when we finish is virtually a brand new engine.
Right.
Right? So how much would and I mean a blueprinted brand new engine, much better than just buying one. How much would a rebuilt engine cost for this?
if you were to make the same kind of power,
Well,
no,
a
just
rebuilt long block goes for around $2,000.
Yeah.
From a rebuilder.
right.
A blueprinted block, well, it depends on the level of blueprinting.
Yeah.
Stock limited blueprinting, or is it just making everything right?
Just
Because you can spend 20 grand on it.
Yeah.
Without
Yeah,
that,
no, I'm
not-
talking, let's say, guys, let's say you go into a typical workshop, garage, right? And you say, I want you to put a reconditioned engine in my car, right? A replica of a stock one, right? How much would the engine cost about?
About 2 grand.
I'd say two.
Right, so we're going to present a pretty good deal, even if we come to $1,999.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, well, that's plenty for us to work with there, we'll come in under that.
Well,
Yeah.
the beauty of this is that, I see it as two things, right? The beauty of this, 318s are throwaway engines, even though they're all of the goodness of 340 does. Or it's all hidden in there, it just needs to be massaged and taken out. But they're worthless to people. It's a low status engine. So even if it was identical to a 340 in every way, shape, or form, it's still a low status engine, and people go, oh, that's not good, right?
Well, I gotta say, Tony, that the parts you brought in look like they're stouter than your typical Chevy parts.
And miles ahead of a small block Ford.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When you think about a Windsor Ford, which is its equivalent, like they were, a 302.
Yeah, they're delicate.
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 They're like they're made for like ballerinas. You know what I mean?
That 302 block, I moved it by myself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Before you got here, so.
Well, the thing.
Yeah, this guy, slim as he may be,
Oh, yeah.
I saw him pick up a Windsor block and load it on an engine stand by him
Yeah. That's back when I was really young and dumb.
last year.
It wasn't nothing but last year.
But yeah, I think realistically, I think we could do it for about $1,000.
But,
That's a new oil pump, rings, bearings, timing chain, a full gasket set, basically all of it. And I mean, the balance job is going to depend on the crank machine work is going to depend on what.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we don't have to regrind the crank,
Okay.
right? If we can get away with
It's good. It's clean standard.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So we're good.
Yeah.
now if we did have to grind the crank, it on the crank grinder that Terry Walters uses, which is it's a monster, and we would restroke the crank 30 thousandths.
Yeah, we could offset grind it.
get the pin up a little bit.
Which I think we need to do for
Yeah.
what our project.
Well, if you're doing a replacement style piston, then yeah, absolutely. You need
Yeah.
as much height as we can get. So like a 60 or 80 thousandths cut off those heads will pretty much give you a closed chamber head. And then
Yep.
the offset grind on a crank.
Those pistons you brought in, were they dish pistons?
No, they're flat tops.
Yeah, they're flat tops.
Okay.
And they set about 110 down the hole.
110 down the hole.
Yeah.
Well,
We've got-
okay. So we can bring them up. Suddenly life is getting better.
Life is always good when you deal with an off part. You should know
You
that.
know, I was telling David, because I was going over a little bit of the architecture of the small block car.
Right.
I said it actually is closer in size to a big block Chevy than it is a small block. 9.58 versus, a 9-inch of a small block Chevy. Think about that. I mean, and 9.8 is the deck height on a big block Chevy.
Well, you got a 6.123
Yeah,
rod.
9/8
Yeah.
or not, or 10/2.
Yeah, the small deck, I'm talking about.
Sure, that one's not.
You know, what's a long rod on a small block Chevy?
Six
They're
inch.
5.7
Yeah.
Yeah.
from the factory,
From the factory.
right? They're like 5.75, is it? 5.78, whatever it is.
Now, the factory did make some rods that were 5.95.
This is still 200 taller than that.
Yeah,
Well, so they were virtually 6-inch rods, and I've never been able to find that. But that's okay, because even those powdered metallurgy rods in the small block, Porsche pioneered that, and boy, they are strong.
I know that.
oh, yeah.
So,
But the thing about
but those rods in there,
you can
they
make
look
all
like-
the power in the world in
Well,
those rods.
yeah. those Chrysler rods in there, unless they're made of the worst steel possible,
No, they're not.
they're going to be a pretty stout piece.
Those rods, right out of the box, just where they are good to 7 grain and 600 horsepower.
Yeah.
And they will.
All you need to do
Live
is polish
all
the
day
beams.
long. We
and
don't-
let it eat.
All we gotta do with those rods is make them take any metal off that's not doing anything.
Right.
I
Flash.
noticed that, no, did you see the size of those balance pads?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, that's gotta be 30 or 40 grams right there.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to look at the big ends because they're inside the piston steel.
Well, what I'd like to, I think we should do this in a couple of phases.
Yeah.
So what I think we should do is we'll all put our heads and resources together and try to get that 1 horsepower per cube out of it with the stock stuff.
Stock stuff.
Then same day, we swap intake manifolds for something conventional
But
and see what it'll make honest.
yeah.
Because people go 400 horsepower to 18s all night long.
Yeah.
And I think that if we get 318, 320 horsepower using that pimple on top of it, you throw a 750 on there.
Yeah.
You know,
And a good
with
intake.
a good intake manifold, and we're talking about 425, 450 horsepower motor. That can be built for.
Yeah. And a set of headers.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't forget about the exhaust side.
Right.
There's a couple of street carburetors that perform really well on the street whilst giving a good power, and that's the 650 quick fuel
Quick fuel.
carburetor, and what do they call it? Actually, I think it's 675, and the holy sweet roller,
Now,
Yeah.
why do you like the quick fuel over the Holly?
because it produces the same good results.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's good.
I don't have an opinion. I have a dyno.
I got you.
Whatever works best.
Yeah. Now, one of them
Whatever
is
we
trickier to calibrate than the other, but that depends on how close it was to start with. I can't remember which one out of the two it was, but I know that the final results with those two carburetors was very good. Now, you suggested a 750. That we tried a 750 on a 327 compared to these and a 750. Had the edge on power. Right?
Well, I'll
But
tell you
the
what.
vacuum secondary 650, they
That work.
flat worked. Yep.
Well, I got 850 on a 318,
Yeah.
and it's a bit much for, like, you can't just flat.
Yeah.
It's a bit much for that, but if you ease the throttle, just
Yeah.
like that, and so instead of just a flat punch, you just work into the throttle.
Yeah.
4,500, 5,000 RPM, it pulls like a freight train. You
Yeah.
never know it was
Yeah.
318.
But you've got that soft spot down low.
Well, the car's set up for matrix.
Yeah.
You missed saying that.
Yeah, so I don't care
Yeah,
about
so
the
you
flat.
remember he's got a race meet.
Yeah.
And it's set up for nitrous.
Now it's already gone 770, right? Leaving in second gear
Yeah.
and only spraying half track because I went there with an empty bottle. The place I was going to get it filled went out of business, so I had enough for one shot. So we launched it in second, sprayed it halfway, it ran a 770, and I went home.
How fast did you go? That would have been about 95, wouldn't it?
No, it's probably about 88.
80, yeah, exactly. I don't remember when I was like 88 or 89, but I was out of it early also.
So we got any questions from the viewers here? Let's see here. Let's look, see what we have here.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry if we didn't.
Yeah. we're caught up in our own little
Yeah.
world over here.
Yes, we are. Sorry.
All right, so we got
You know-
two hacks in there.
Two
Sorry,
hacks.
I don't get to see this guy very often.
We've never seen each other.
Right? Although we've known of each other and spoken on the phone, this is the first time we've actually met. If we were at shows every year, do you go to SEMA and PRI?
PRI, but not you know. I'm not an industry guy, so I avoid the industry.
Right. But I bet you've been there when I've been there, and our paths have never crossed.
Well, you were doing books at the same time that I was doing magazines. And I actually remember doing reviews on your books when I was doing magazines. And I said good things about it.
You worked a lot with Steve Collison.
I certainly did.
Now, I knew Steve pretty good. I thought he was just a champion.
When Steve Collison died, 2000 was it?
Yeah.
That I was done with magazines.
Right. I tell you, I was talking to him on the phone probably an hour before he passed.
I was talking to him on the phone that morning also.
Yeah. Now, he was talking to somebody at the time he died. I can't remember who that was.
It was, I think it was Dave Wallace. He was on a phone, I know, he was talking to somebody.
Yeah.
It was either Dave Wallace or I didn't
Might
know
have
the answer.
Or
It
it
was
might
one of
have
those
been
guys.
Steve, God, this guy's been friends of mine for a long time. On the Motor Trend.
Oh, you're talking about dosage?
That's it. You know, sorry, Steve, brain surgery. You know, Steve Dulcich used to work out of my shop probably
I know you told me.
right? And we worked together. I don't know it. It seemed like that, but I'm sure it was about 5 years. You know, that guy was never once did he ever cause us a problem in the shop. Not once. We had no fallings out over anything. Every single minute I spent with that guy was quality time. Right?
Yeah.
So
here's a question. Jonathan Couchy is asking, Tony, are we going to keep the heads with 178 valves?
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
are?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that.
It's supposed to be stock valves.
Stop.
I was gonna use stock LS valves.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Right.
that was a monkey wrench.
Yeah, no.
Well,
No, I really believe that we can get there.
they got 3/8 stems, haven't they?
Yeah.
This is a heavy valve, and I don't want to use a heavy spring on there. And you know, you can go and
We're
get.
not going to rev it to 10,000 RPM.
Well, I don't see why we shouldn't rev it to 6.
James Brown was come back. What it was is Uncle Tony even in the same class as Mr. Vizard when it comes to building engines? Seems Tony is only interested in Chrysler garbage.
It ain't Chrysler car.
For your information, I've worked on everything, but I don't consider myself to be an engine builder. I'm a hot rodder that builds engines for himself. I'm not an engine builder. He's an engine builder. I can assemble them the same way he can assemble them. But he designs from the ground up. I slam the stuff together and send it.
I come more from that train of thought.
We're
I
both stab and steer guys.
Yes,
Old
stab and
school.
steer.
I
Yeah.
get
And he's the
He's a
slide
brain.
rule guy.
I get to do the exciting bit.
Yeah.
That
Right.
is the exciting bit.
Because
As I get older, it's your end of things I'm more interested in.
now, let me ask a question here. If we've got worn guides in these heads, and I'm kind of addressing it to you guys as well as Tony. If we've got worn guides, which we almost certainly do, can we put guides in the heads?
Yes, but
Yeah.
I'm bringing a set of
Okay.
heads.
But iron ones, not bronze ones, right? Because the bronze guides get pricey, and the iron guides work just as well for the
Yeah.
first
You can make them
200,000.
like McMuffins for all I care.
Yeah.
We can get iron guides. Now, if we can put guides in, we could just as easily put 8mm guides in as I can. That means I can use the LS valves, right? And I promise I won't buy any new valves. I'll scrounge them from engine builders and throw them in the trash.
But wouldn't it be more interesting to see how you can contour and shape?
Oh, I can
The
show them.
original ones, and then-
Shall I do both? Right? I'll show on the flow bench how far we can get with the stock valves.
Yeah.
Then I'll show on the flow bench the advantages of going with the other. Now, since part of the deal is that we come up with an engine which is built as best as it can be built, right? If the engine needs guides, we will put the guides in and go to the 8mm stem valves. in the final build. Now, does that sound, and this is for these guys as well as you to make the decision. So, you know, let's give them a few.
Let me ask Tony. So you brought us a set of heads tonight
To carve up.
to carve up,
Right.
so we can put them into bandsaw to check the
Yeah.
thickness of the castings.
I have another set of heads coming that are complete off of running motor.
Okay.
That shouldn't have any issues at all.
Okay, good.
So I'll pop those in the mail.
Yeah.
And I'll get you.
Or you can,
We're in a week or so.
yeah, whenever.
But at least you have something to start cutting on.
That's right. Because that's the main thing, to find out what we're actually
Oh,
working with.
we're getting replies here, right? I'm okay with it if we get flow bench numbers from both valves, what you will.
Let's see here. Two Hacks is saying, David, I'm building a 388 small block Chevy for a friend. We'll be using dart heads. 202, is there much to improve on with dart heads for a street car? Are they the Pro 1 castings?
2 Hacks,
Yeah, Jeff. He's my buddy.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Jeff,
He's a good dude.
go to my 383 engine build on my new channel, David Vizard. Right now, Andy can tell you about that
Yeah.
build. We drag raced to prove that it was making the power, right? Because the BS stops when the flag drops.
Yeah.
Right? Well, in the case of drag racing, the BS stops when the light
Lead
goes
light
green.
comes on. Yeah, when the lead
Right.
light comes on.
So forget the horsepower numbers. By the end of the year, with a piece of junk car, bent wheels, and all this stuff on it, we were only a tenth of a second slower than the track champion,
Yeah.
right? And that's after we had been protested for a cardboard mod,
Yeah.
right? We might have been able to just win. Would have been pretty close, wouldn't it?
Thank you for the super chat there, Bill. Appreciate that.
That's very generous, yeah.
Very generous. Question: why was the 2-liter inline 4 formula so popular in Europe but took so long to gain mainstream traction here in the States? The British way of simplify and lighten is very similar to the American muscle way of thinking. So, what do you think that was?
Bill, are we talking about Formula Ford 2000 and Formula Sports 2000?
No. He's talking about just the basic concept of the inline, the 2-liter inline
Yeah.
4-cylinder. Why that's
Because the British touring car is 2-liter
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
well,
Well,
yeah. I was going to say, I think
less weight of car, so a smaller engine can go just as fast.
right. Well, not only that, but it comes from the post-war tradition, because post-war, everything in Europe was downsized compared to what we had in America.
Right.
So people who grew up in the 50s and the 50s and 60s, that's all they had to work with. And so the industry broke around it. The same way in the 50s and the 60s, our ancestors, this is the ancestor right here, they had small block Chevys to work with, and early Chrysler Chevys and whatnot. So to us, the big V8s were the tradition, and for them, the small 4-cylinders were the tradition.
Right.
Yeah,
That's good. A
that
good
kind of
point.
sums that up pretty well, doesn't it?
I tried.
If you
So wait, before
think about this, those 2-liter engines are powering cars which weigh approximately 1/3.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying though, what I'd like to do is dyno it with that setup. Let's max it out.
Right.
Let's swap the
Let me see
750.
that.
What?
Let's put that.
Over
Let's
here.
swap the 750 and an intake manifold. Let's see what kind of numbers we got, max out numbers, and then I'd like to give it away.
That sounds fun.
You know,
What do you think?
Yeah,
to benefit St. Jude's.
definitely.
Yeah.
So I will leave all of that up to you.
So we pass it on to John, don't we?
Yeah. Or I'll do it. Whatever.
Well,
However.
whatever, we'll take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now what's how many yeses and nos or comments have we had on the?
Well,
The
here's
2000.
a question. Bicycle guy 111. How high compression do I realistically need to have in order to have a good functional tunnel ram on a small block Chevy?
Well, it depends. That question isn't as straightforward as it may look. But let's assume that it's going to be mostly a good functional turnaround on a small bar. I'm assuming here that you would need to be able to drive it on the street, right? In which case, I would say you need to be looking at 10.5 to 1.
Yeah,
Right? That's, 10.5 to
it's
1
good all around.
seems to be a magic number for so many engines, doesn't it?
Well, the thing with the turnaround on any given engine is that don't just think of the turnaround as a really long runner regular intake manifold.
That's
That's
right.
really all it is.
Except they go straight in.
Except they go straight in.
Yeah,
And compression really doesn't have very much to do with the dynamics that are happening inside the intake manifold. So it could be a 7-to-1 motor, or it could be a 15-to-1 motor. It doesn't make any difference. It's still the same sonic pulses that are running up and down the runner and shoving everything through during the overlap period.
But it's a bit of a waste of time on a low compression engine.
yeah, and
It's-
it's stock cam.
It's got a lot of potential, right? Now, let's not leave anything on the table. And a 10.5 to 1 is a very easy to get. Did he say 383?
Yeah.
Right?
I think
Or 388, that means it's slightly bigger bore, I would say. And if you've got a ton of RAM on, you need people to realize that you are fast, right? So
Yeah.
you need to make up also something appropriate the rest of it. When it comes to camshaft, if you're going to buy a cam, it's better to buy one that works than one that doesn't.
Right.
It's exactly the same cost.
So let me ask you this question, Dave. Do the 318 heads remind you of any others? Are they unique?
There's a lot of small block Chevy in there, isn't there?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I,
When Formula 5000 was in vogue, right, the fastest 5-liter V8 single seater
was it Chrysler? 318 base?
and it had to be D-stroke 302.
Yeah, I know.
But here's the point: nobody else did one.
Yeah.
All the others were small block Chevys or small block Fords. Here's the Ford 'cause
318
it's
Blue
lucky.
Run is in the house.
what's happening, man?
I see Lunar there. Man. James Brown. Fox body Mustangs and all the Fords in general fit into the same category as Chrysler. If it's not GM, it's just not the best. Well, basically,
Wait a minute. Let me just read that because I'm not sure I'm understanding you, James. Right.
well,
And Scarlett.
I look at the 318 when you get down to the nuts and bolts, has the same amount of potential as a 302. And
More.
more. And we know what a 302 Ford can do. Like I've told you before, if this was a Fox body Mustang, if Bottle Rocket was a Fox body Mustang with a 5-liter Ford, no one in the world would question its ability.
Bottle Rocket weighs less
I know.
than a 5-liter Mustang.
Can we bring that down a bit? One question, I want to read that one question right at the top. Michael, is that Gunnerman? Right, okay, don't have my glasses. DV, have you ever worked on the 80s wine small block Chevy single plane intakes? I bought one in Saul Bill Jenkins' book where they had some. Michael, I am going to be revealing one of those manifolds you're talking of with a super trick plenum, right? No one is going to guess what it is, I can tell you that much. And I've just got to do the last bit of dyno testing on it, but let me give you a clue.
It's a pretty killer piece.
It works almost as good as an RPM air gap at the bottom end, and it works better than a Victor at the top end, right?
So
And it's also about an inch lower than a Victor.
So Tim here, 318 will run. I've always said if Mopar guys treated 318s like Ford guys treat 302s, there'd be a lot more screaming 318s out there. That's absolutely right, Tim.
So Dave, you want to go with the LS valve to go with the 5/16 to 8mm step.
They are so much lighter, it's unreal.
Question is that, right? And I've never done this, but What about grinding down the shank of the valve right past the stem, or right past the tool?
The reason I'm doing it is because the valve is intrinsically a better shape to start with, and it's hard to get that shape without an awful lot of work, right? Whereas I can get the LS valves, clean them up, they're ready to go, right?
Yeah.
So it's a question of maybe 15 minutes with the LS valves, or 2 hours, 15 minutes with the others. No, maybe 3 hours, right? That's to get the best out of it. So what I want to try to do, and you guys come in and make your comments on this, is I'm trying to get the combination of the best bang for the buck and the best bang for the hour,
Okay.
right? And I'm sure there's some middle ground somewhere. And this is the problem we're facing, Tony, is the middle ground keeps moving for each person. They want this, and I don't want to get involved in that. I'll do this, right? So that's why whoever said, "Are we going to flow test both heads?" Well,
We're gonna be flow testing everything.
Yes, right. They hit the nail right on the head.
Well, this is going to be a gold mine of porting because I'm dropping this stuff off, and I'm going to supply them with parts as they need, them, and help wherever they ask me to help. But for the most part, these guys are. This is it. So between the two of them, you're going to see so much R&D work on all the various aspects of this engine, especially the cylinder heads.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to shock people what you can get out of those 318
Well,
heads.
for me, since I'm going to be doing most of the cylinder head grinding, because David can't physically stand holding a die grinder for hours now.
No, I can't.
But it's going to be interesting to show each step of the way for the average person.
Sure.
Say, look, this is the mod, and this is what these ports look like when we finish.
And we're going to capitalize on our skill for molding ports, aren't
Yeah, yeah,
we? So they'll be able to see a port in reverse with the mold,
yeah.
right? I think the potential's in there for some
Hey,
pretty good flow.
Charlie's in here.
Yes,
Hey,
Charlie. Hey, yeah, I was thinking about calling you today, and then I thought, nah, I don't need to talk to that ruffian.
Yeah, he's one of David's former students.
Yeah.
Really good guy.
Charlie, did you say you've got experience with that head?
Said it's very durable, pretty good oil. And that's one thing about Mopar. The oiling system is great.
Well, that's good.
People who build like Fords, especially like Winters, look at the oiling system, like they look at the saddles and everything on the 318, and they just cry. They burst into tears.
Yeah. I mean, because we're jealous. I'm a Ford guy, but my heart's with Mopar. But when you compare the two blocks side by side, that would be a good video showing that little Windsor block.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great video.
Because you can physically see it.
Jonathan there's asking about the poly 318 cranks. Now, what does that mean?
That's the early 318.
Okay.
So what's different? It's
62 and earlier. 62 and earlier uses a crank flange. That's not a regular crank flange.
Right.
It's extended an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and it's 8 holes, and they're not tapped. They're just blank holes, so that the converter, those early converters, had 8 studs that fit through, and you tighten them up. Between the oil pan and the converter, you get in there and tighten those bolts. Those cranks aren't really usable for anything, and it's not like you can use like later 8-bolt stuff. So it goes like so. Yeah,
It's so obscure.
right. It's completely obscure. It doesn't match up to like the 8-bolt 46 heavy flange or what was the one that they used on the small block.
What's that?
There was the Keith Black ran crank and had to run a crankshaft. So an 8-bolt flange. It was sold to direct connection. And the poly head crank doesn't.
None of that's the
Right.
same.
But the 63 and later is the same crank as the 340.
Yeah. Let's see here.
So
Okay.
if you were to make a comparison between, I think this will click for you right away.
Yeah.
If you were to make a comparison between a small block Mopar and a Ford motor,
Yeah.
the FE,
Pretty much. You can get there. I mean, you can see it.
the 318 and the FE Ford are very, obviously there's differences in the skirt,
Yeah,
Right,
it's
which
not
is-
the wide block, but.
right? But in terms of proportion
Mhm.
and the way that the bulk that's in there,
Yeah,
that like the FE is a lightweight big wheel by comparison compared to a rack motor. The FE is like a lightweight big block,
yeah.
and the 318 is like a very beefy small block. And the
I
two of them
agree.
cross about the same, and I think they have about the same strength potential
Yeah.
as Block 4.
Matthews DS 111, right? Yes, we've,
I'll split my share.
yes, between my friend Mervyn in the Caribbean and I, we must have split 9 or 10 of them.
Yeah.
Right.
I've done 3.
But we have the fix.
Scott Speed Shop's in here. Says, I say if the parts are worn, a man might as well spend the money and upgrade what's worn out.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that's.
It's gonna hit fresh. This is an experiment. This is
It
an
is.
experiment.
It's,
Yeah.
And it's not so much the end goal of it. The end goal is every project needs a goal of some
Right.
sort. And so that 1 horsepower per cube is a goal. But the point is, by following along the things that are done to this pimple of a carburetor, or the intake manifold, or the cylinder heads, these are universal principles that apply to every engine. So if you're hot running a Briggs and Stratton for your kids, whatever, right? Or you're building a small block shed, all of this stuff,
transfers.
it all transfers. You just have to have the open mind and look beyond that it's a 318 two barrel.
Yeah.
Because this is all just,
Well,
It's an engine.
that brings me to another question, right? Which
Yes.
I talked about with Andy here, right? And we kind of had a decision, but which we won't disclose until we've asked you and the readers that are responding.
viewers, you are old school.
You are old school.
Sorry, guys. And that's, once we dyno tested it on a modified version of this carburetor, then an ultra modified version of this carburetor,
Okay.
can we put it onto a cheap 4-barrel?
That's
Yeah,
what we're
that's what I was
talking about.
saying before.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
put an
so-
intake and a carburetor
Yeah,
on it, a set of headers.
let's achieve the goal with this thing, okay?
Oh,
And then
are you
we'll
talking
talk
about
about
intake as well?
Yeah, an intake.
Okay, well, okay,
I'll bring an intake on a carburetor. so
let's
it's
try
really
it
open.
on the stock intake, see what just the carburetor does, and then we'll try the intake.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Because literally what we're going to do with this engine is we have to start with this and science it out as best we can. Then we go to the intake manifold, basically throughout the entire engine, freeing up friction that's in the bottom end
Mhm.
and everything else, and just sciencing out every.
Eliminating parasitic losses,
Yeah,
getting maximum flow from a head that isn't known for maximum flow,
right.
proportioning things, working on rocker ratios,
Yeah.
all of these.
Using the stock part.
Yeah, this is all good hot rod science. Overlook the fact that it's a 318, and I'll apply it to the 318 too, but I'm going to apply it across the board. And
Yeah.
you people who want to learn how to make power, here you go.
Right.
Here's a guy to teach how to make power, and here's the way he's going to do it.
Well, like back in the day, people would go through 150 rocker arms to find out which ones had the best
Right.
ratio. You know what I'm saying? That's that type mentality, because back then you didn't have the Summit catalog to go pick endless amounts of parts. You had to do it yourself.
I saw this question a couple of times. Fellow. Iceman 2K10.
Yeah.
What are the plans for the stock 2-barrel 318 intake, especially the plenum area?
That's going to be pretty.
That, we can't really say until we start flow testing and finding out where the air is going,
Yeah.
right? That's, we plan to seriously look at it, but as for what will be the end result right now,
Yeah, pretty much.
I could only do a rough guess at it best.
That intake manifold is actually a lot more generous than you think it is.
I think so.
I looked at the
I showed
picture
him
on
the
the
picture.
outside and I thought, you know what, I think we can do something with that. And this is why I wanted to use a 4-barrel on it with the stock manifold, because I'm sure if we used the right spacer and blended the outlets of the spacer into the manifold runners, we'd have ourselves
A really good manifold.
Pretty good manifold, and the guy has not to buy another one.
I think you may have distribution issues,
But, yeah,
given the footprint
yeah.
that you've got to work through, because there's a footprint. And you may have distribution issues. A much better idea would be a 500 poly 2-barrel.
Well, that's
We
not,
could try that as well.
I think that would be more suiting, because the plenum itself is generous, but the head leading to it is not.
we can fix that. We got a meal.
Okay.
We've got a meal.
Remember Paladin have gun wheel travel? Well, we have mill, lathe, lots of other stuff, wheel machine.
Jed is asking, are we going to use the 2-barrel single plane intake manifold? Is that what you have?
That's our starting point.
A cheap man's straight down there.
Now, I need to ask a question to you guys here because I don't know the answer. Is there a good aftermarket 2-plane manifold like the RPM air gap?
Yeah, they make it.
Yeah, they make
Is
it.
it as good as the RPM air gap?
It is an RPM air gap.
Right, because I'd like to try that because I've had some
Great
very
result.
good results with those. You set your carburetor up right with one of those and it's right on the money. And that's a holding manifold, days.
So Lunar is asking, out of curiosity, why going with the 2-barrel instead of 4-barrel? Because honestly, we want to see what we can do with the limitations of the stock parts before we start. Because ultimately, like if you put this in a car and you pop the hood and you see a little dinky BBD carburetor there, no one is going to be suspecting that it's going to do anything.
So you're overlooking the basic fact that to build really a stock parts 400 horsepower 318, it's nothing. It's like literally it's a 4-barrel. You throw a decent, even a factory. Throw a factory 71, 72 that you know the manifold I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Building a 400 horsepower parts stock parts 318 has been done before. It's been done 1,000 times, but it's never been done with this kind of handicap.
No.
So the purpose of this is not to see how much power we can make out of 318.
No.
It's like, why not just put 2 turbos on it and put nitrous through it and put a blower on top of that and bore and stroke it to 800 cubic inches and run it on fucking mozzarella, excuse my French.
You know
Why
what
not
it's
do
making
all those things? Well, obviously all those things make power.
Yes,
it's making us use our brains.
I know where you're going on
You
there.
know what you understand.
Totally
Of course.
understand that. So, and I agree with it. What we're trying to do here is build an engine where basically our only means of making power is to remove metal.
And to think.
And to think.
To think.
Now, excuse me, guys, I've got to go get another drink.
Okay.
Right, so let me do that and I shall return.
I mean, we're making horsepower with a small block ballpark. There's one right there. What was that, about 800 horsepower?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can't see it here because it's in the other room.
Yeah, it's David's cup car.
Right.
Yeah. Even a better hustle when you have a stock sounding camshaft.
Exactly. See, that was my idea with this,
Yeah.
right? That was my idea with this. You take this setup, right? And you take this engine, it's all stock looking, just as stock looking as you can, with this little tiny pimple of a carburetor set on top of it.
Yeah.
And you put it in like a 67 Valiant with 391, 410 gears, right?
Yeah.
Do the suspension, but leave everything looking, run it through a big diameter, quiet, single exhaust. Right? Can you see this? And then go to a Mopar event, right? And start calling out, start waving the cash around and calling out like, Hemi Cudas and A12 cars and whatnot. Because you, at 325 horsepower, at 2,700 pounds, guess what? You're going to run away and hide from that Hemi Cuda or six-pack Roadrunner or whatever it happens to be. So you can actually take something like this and hurt a lot of feelings. And I think a big part of my interest in doing this comes from the street racer days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it never occurred to me to do anything like this way back when. But that would have been bitchy.
That's exactly right. The thing about it is, back in the day when people started running nitrous, everybody tried to hide the nitrous kit, make it look stock. Well, that's what we're trying to do, but do it inside the engine, Bill, $25. Thank you, sir. We all also be experimenting on how much ram air affects the motor in your stock form body modification just more. Well, this is just an exercise.
Yeah, this is an exercise. It's a dyno thing. It's all
Yeah,
it is.
yeah. Let's see here. I'm really curious to see, because I do think the 230 horsepower rating is fairly close. It may, like on today's dyno, I do believe it would probably be around 200 to 210. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
The way that it's measured. So basically, we're trying to gain over 100 horsepower using stock
Well,
stuff.
69 it was rated at 230.
Yeah,
70 it was rated at 230.
yeah.
But again, like the cam timing and everything is
So
all
mundane.
yeah, very it'll wake up.
Yeah,
It'll
it's
wake up.
going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it. David ran off to England. Scott, Jed saying, so here's my next question. Would you all like a 4-barrel single plane iron intake to compare it to? You actually have a 66D Dart intake, 273.
That was a no. It was a
That's a
well,
killer
it
piece.
was an Alpenhausen intake.
I don't know.
Who made that intake on that D-Dart?
It's a single plane 4-barrel, but I don't know if it's the big Holly pattern. It's small.
Yeah, it
It is.
It is because
Okay.
because the D-Dart came with the package came with a Holly carburetor.
That is pretty cool stuff. Ron saying bye bye base circle.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
exactly.
Yeah. But like I said, the key to this is if you have an engine that's sitting there pounding the ground and just loping like crazy, it's not really going to fit what we're trying to do. We want it to sound
Yeah.
mundane, taxi cab.
Taxi cab, single exhaust, dead quiet, and a car with like hubcaps and like like just a ratty kind of like stock looking Valiant, and then you could hurt so many feelings. And in the right environment, you can make a lot of money with a car like that.
He says he has two. Chrysler made the intake and they used a spacer adapter to fit the Holly. Okay, I did not know that.
Well, what did he say now?
Jed said that he has two of them. Chrysler made the intake. They used a spacer adapter to fit the Holly.
Oh, the D-Dart?
I've never seen one in person, so I don't know.
Hang on.
You got to look it up.
I gotta look this up. I used to have all this stuff stored away in my head. Give me 1 second, guys.
So, people saying we should put this in the gold Valiant in the shop. We were actually talking about earlier, if you're new to the broadcast, that we were going to give this thing away to benefit St. Jude's. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, once we're done dynoing it in different configurations, because it will be interesting to see just how well a good single 4-barrel intake carb setup and set of headers would really add to it. You're right, Charlie. Anti-reversion on the intake and exhaust can give a stock sound to a rowdy engine.
I'm not getting a very good signal here, so it's like
Yeah, good luck with it. If you get better signal, better than me.
it's just going really slow.
Slow. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, Jen is right. It's a 4160 bolted to the stock intake. So yeah, they would have had to use an adapter on that.
Ah,
Okay.
I got you. Daniel Wilson saying, gotta love their optimism in regards to the 318 natural aspirated trim. Otherwise, they have the work. That's right. We want this to try our brain power. You know,
That's the whole point.
It's the whole point. We're self-imposing the rules upon ourselves. You know, because we want to see how far we can push it.
Hey guys, paint room, I'm coming in
Oh,
with
sir.
my compulsory hot chocolate here. Hot chocolate.
So what about exhaust manifold mods? You'll be seeing that as well, because that's, it's gonna be ran with manifolds. It'll have a head pipe, coming off of it, but.
Oh, we're good?
New guy's garage. Hey
Wait a
guys.
minute. Tell them what we're gonna do with the cast iron manifold, right?
Well, no, we'll save that for,
Well,
Down the
there's
road.
more to, there's more to it.
yeah, there's a lot more to it.
You can get cast iron manifolds to work pretty good if you tailor the tailpipe right,
Yeah,
or the
You guys' garage.
yeah. Wouldn't you think a properly sized single exhaust with a Y pipe would produce more scavenging and thus more power than dual exhaust? Been thinking about that lately.
Well, that's one of
You've
those
been there and done that with
questions that is,
Cyclone.
how long is a piece of string,
Yeah.
right? Okay, you guys,
I'm gonna say,
not an easy question to answer.
Let Tony put his 2 cents in, then you come back.
two factors with that. The design of the Y pipe. The Y pipe itself has to promote scavenging, so you can't just
Tell
have
them about your.
you can't just have a T.
Yeah.
But if you have a side pipe that merges as it would, let's say, in a header collector, and then you run it through, let's say, a 2 3/4 inch, 3-inch single exhaust, yeah, you'll make more power than you will with a set of duals. Mostly for the fact that there's less loss, parasitic loss, as the exhaust travels on the pipe, because the more surface area the exhaust has to contact, the slower it wants to move.
That's a factor that gets overlooked.
I know it does.
Yeah.
And then heat, because heat is the lubricant of exhaust, and there's less heat loss through a big single pipe than there would be through 2 duals.
See, another thing I want to bring up is about our time frame. Okay.
I don't know what the time frame is.
Well, time frame is something I've got to get cast. Speaking of which, the unfriendly ghost is back home today.
Well, the Ghostbuster is sitting in the shop collecting
Okay,
cobwebs, ready for a
Let
shot.
me get my jump running, and
Okay.
we're gonna make it happen.
Okay.
But once that's over with, then I can go full bore on this 318. You know what I'm saying? I want to get Casper running, and this is going to be like a side project for me and David. But I really would like to have it on the dyno in a few months, say by March.
Look, I'm leaving this
You know-
entirely up to you guys. You're gonna tell me, you're gonna tell me what you need from me,
Yeah.
and I'll supply whatever.
Now, one thing, when we put it on the dyno, I would really love for you to come down here and be with us when we do
Oh,
it.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, now especially with my situation, unless I get some
Health-wise.
health-wise, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to leave it to Andy to represent me on the dyno,
Yeah.
because right now, it's, the times I get to go out of the house is from here to hospital or doctor's
Yeah.
office.
So we'll do the wrenching on it. And
Yeah,
Yeah, whatever, you let me know.
guys, let me tell you this. Andy's gonna help out by doing all the hard work on this. I get to do the fun bits, like
yeah.
doing the prototype port and that. But let me tell you how difficult this is going to be for me, which is why I'm not dyno testing. I cannot pick up one of those cylinder heads.
Right.
I will have to have somebody to move the cylinder heads while I'm porting them.
That'll be me.
So I will do a mod on a cylinder, and then I'll have to get Andy to move it.
Yeah.
But or
That's the
we
way we've been
sew it
doing
in half before we start.
Right.
I can manage a half a cylinder head.
But I think that would be something that's realistic for the viewers, because I don't want the viewers thinking this is going to be done, in 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because I know how trolls are. We're going to do it, and it's going to be done right. And you'll see it all along the way on our channels.
Oh, what color are we gonna paint the block?
We want to paint it stock Chrysler blue. Let's make it look.
Is
lovely.
that? I was thinking, have I got that blue over? Gone.
You do.
I've got that blue
You do.
in enamel. I don't want to put any regular cellulose paint on this.
Make it look really good.
I've got a.
Crowning jewel.
I think I've got a
Chrysler
light
Clipper blue.
blue,
It's a darker blue.
Yeah.
right? it's like that one over there.
That's the Ford blue.
That's
Right.
That's, you know what color that is? That's Rust-Oleum, bright blue, royal blue,
Yeah,
Right, well, we didn't use that brand on
gloss
it.
royal blue.
But,
yeah.
so
If we
I've
painted
got,
it orange, that's too much of a giveaway. We want to
Yeah.
make this thing look
Oh, yeah, no, it's a
Right.
corporate blue.
black sparkle.
Well, okay, oh, yeah. Unless, okay, you could do this one of two ways, right? You could dress it out as a 70 and newer, which would be corporate blue,
Okay,
and those are valve codes that I brought.
okay, so that's perfect.
Okay,
Lunar
or we could do it
Angles
69 and earlier, which would be red.
That's what carries across the engine blue.
Yeah, that's no
Right.
problem.
But the problem is I want to use enamel,
Yeah,
because that goes on thick and comes out shiny. Right,
Let's see
so,
here. Charles is saying, Charlie is saying, read my last post. Cut the heads for big valves, like 100 valves, and send them to me with the intake control. Well, we're going to do all this stuff here.
Charlie, you come up here, we haven't seen you for ages.
You come up, hang out.
Yeah. We could get into all kinds of trouble.
I've never, Matt saying paint it black. I have a thing about black engines. Well,
Yeah,
with the exception of this one over here that you can't see. But
Here's the problem with painting it black. We've got color photography here. If we paint the engine black, we might as well have black and white photography.
That's true.
yeah.
Right, now, here's the problem. Black with the right bits on can look really good
Oh,
in
yeah.
real life, right? But it doesn't photograph very well. And the other thing is when you put it in the car, unless you've got a light engine bay, the engine's lost. So all that work you did on making the engine look good vanishes, just like that. So I agree, black's a good color, but only when the engine's sitting in the workshop.
Tony, answer this question to Nick D'Angelo.
Did a video once on daily driver heads and explained the importance of port velocity. Can you explain the balance of port velocity and volume?
Yes.
There you go.
That is everything.
Now, wait a minute, the question was, can you explain the balance of port velocity and volume?
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Simple yes.
Next.
Well, he asked me.
Well, I said it's everything.
Would you please explain it? Yeah, sure, okay. Now, here's the deal.
We talk about the balance between.
Yeah.
How much
We
how much velocity is sacrificed for volume?
Yeah.
Absolutely covered.
I know you.
But my
I
cylinder head
wouldn't
program.
dare try to answer that question.
Yeah, my cylinder head program does exactly that. What it does is when you put all the details in and you into the computer, what it does is it calculates the port energy, which is the best which is generated by the best combination of flow and velocity,
Mhm.
right? So what you're talking about there is flow and velocity. How do you balance it? That the program balances it by virtue of steering you to the highest port energy.
Right.
And then you can calculate, or the program also calculates what I call, because I think I originated this, what I call the port energy density. Right now, what this means is it allows you to compare any port with any port to see how good you're doing.
Right.
Because it removes things like valve size, port volume, etc., and it just looks at the energy. Now,
The port is capable.
yes, I'm going to give you a long string of things that it's not, so pay attention. It calculates the energy per square inch of valve per foot length of port. Now, we might only have a half foot port, but it doesn't matter. It calculates it and says, well, if that port was a foot long, it'd be this much. And it allows you to make a comparison with your Chrysler head, stock, compared with a Formula One head.
Yeah.
And you can see that stock is really puny. But now, here's the thing. Having 4 valves doesn't necessarily mean you can't do a good cylinder head.
What you got there, Tony? You've seen something.
Why do you want to interrupt it?
Huh? Oh, I thought you just pointed something.
Yeah. Oh, go on.
Were you finished?
Well, I think I was.
I don't know.
Did I explain that properly?
I think you did.
All right. Pierre Carlson asked, how much difference does exhaust wrapping do?
It does more on the track than on the dyno, right? That's where it really pays off. Now, I have got limited experience wrapping exhausts to see what they do, but I've got a lot of experience getting intake manifolds that don't absorb heat,
Right.
right?
Because that's really what you're trying to do.
That, yeah. Now, I'm going to guess here that wrapping the exhaust and then putting the car on the track's worth at least 10 horsepower on the track.
You really think that much?
Well, let me
Because
Well,
just
let me-
wrapping the primary tubes.
tell you, Gilbert. Right? Let me explain what we did on our Mini. Right? We tested it. The intake manifold was made of steel. Right? It was formed. And we had two of them. One was black, just as it came out of the. It was like gunmetal.
Okay.
But there was no gunmetal on it. That's how it was. With all the welding and heat to bend the pipes and things like that. It was black. Absolutely bare steel, but black. The other one was polished in chrome.
Okay.
Right? And polished on the outside. The inside of the manifold had chrome on it, but it was just as rough as it was before. Because not that it was rough. Right? The guy that made these manifolds was really good. Anyway, here's the thing. On the dyno, if we just dynoed it, one manifold against the other, it didn't show very much difference. On the other hand, when we got a big fan and put in front of the manifolds, right, the black one picked up less horsepower than the chrome one. And so we took both manifolds to the racetrack and tried them. And our driver was about 0.3 of a second faster with the chrome manifold.
Charlie's bringing up a point. It also eats up headers.
Well, what I was going to say is, where most people wrap headers is off the primary tube, and off the primary tube is the last place you need heat to be retained, because the heat that's in the primary tube is always being replenished by what's coming out of the engine. It's only as you start to get down the exhaust where heat loss becomes, like once you get to the collector part. So one of the ways you tune collectors is to take like a wax pencil. So you make an extension and you bolt the extension to the header, you take like a wax pencil or crayon and you draw a line on the header and you make a run. And where it stops melting, that's where you make your cut. Well, where it stops melting is where you need the heat to be retained. So wrapping your primary tubes wouldn't be nearly as effective as let's just say running a double wall exhaust pipe off the collector, which would retain more heat and be more effective.
If you really want to get pedantic, what's that mean?
That's
above my pay grade.
Oh yeah, man.
Let's see here.
Going for the how long before you throw David and Andy under the bus? That's a big. David would go under pretty easy, I think. I can just but I can't.
That's a whole lot of meat right here.
What exhaust wrapping? That's what you should do second after you've had the internals of the pipe coated, right? Basically, what needs to happen is now the company that's local to me and they've done
Jet lot.
No,
Calico.
Calico Coatings,
Yeah.
right? They've done several important manifolds for me, and I don't know whether they just pour it in or they've got a spray thing that on a flexible that they push through or pull through the pipe, right? But when we had those headers on, and even though the pipes were glowing, or they were just about to start glowing dull red, right? The same ones before, they were red hot for like this much of the pipe, and they were orange,
Yeah,
bordering
they were
white.
orange.
Right now, here's the deal. When we stop the engine, the heat from those coated ones seemed to vanish, right?
Yeah.
No burning, right? Put your hand on the pipe. Not long after you stop, try that with it.
You could.
You know, and 10 minutes later, you can still get a burn.
Mitten,
I'm all for this coatings on the inside.
mitten made muscle. Have you had any experience with cam motion camshafts?
Yes, but it was a long time ago. Always funny to see random internet mechanics tell us something that
So
what? What is it? What is that? What does Dean mean then? Dean, what do you mean? And I play Tiger Pool.
whatever. Who
That's
knows?
Australian, right? And I should have known.
I have no
I
clue.
have no idea what
I
that
have
means.
clue.
It's shattered crash. Honey will throw anyone under the bus for views. Oh, I only throw people who can spell for correctly.
Crazy.
It shows you the IQ of these people.
Under the bus for views.
It's capitalized for. UT is sponsored by Shattered Crankshafts. Is working on a crank scraper beyond? Yes, but what shattered cranks have absolutely nothing at all to do with windage. Shattered crank, that's from harmonics.
Yeah.
That's from extended detonation cycles. If anything, the windage stripe would well, you couldn't make enough. Normally, aspect on gasoline, you couldn't make enough detonation really to shatter a crankshaft with what we're talking about here.
No, we're gonna be safe in that area.
Yeah, definitely.
But
This
this is not our first rodeo, is it, guys?
No,
when we were running the fuel cars, what happened was I did a video about this.
yeah.
What happened was we started with wet sump pans. So you put a case of oil in there.
Right,
Pans only this thick, so the crankshaft was submerged in oil.
right.
And the cars are motored through, no problem. They changed the rules to force everybody to go to a dry sump system. And as soon as they did that, crankshaft, 1 or 2 runs, they could throw them away. They would shatter connecting rods like glass.
Yeah.
And they took that oil, that case of oil,
Yeah.
and it was acting as a
oil.
harmonic damper.
Yeah.
It was absorbing. Sean is asking about IOP website is down. Where can we buy the IOP program? We're working on it.
We're working on that.
Yeah.
Right? We've got to read it. Now, again, Marvin handled all that.
Yeah.
And
And we're having to get it all up and going again.
yeah, and God bless his soul, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. That guy took up all the jobs that I didn't like doing.
Yeah.
He didn't ask me whether I wanted to do it. He just knew that all I wanted to do was play on the flow bench, on the dyno, or on the racetrack. Well, the racetrack's out now. And it's going to be hard for me to find a partner like that again.
Yeah. What you got there?
Wheelie King, what's happening, man? Wrapping the header works really well on a 2-cycle, but only wrapped to where the cone of the expansion chamber begins. That will really mess with the port timing. Yeah, I would think so, because if you're changing the heat, you're changing the velocity, and so it's absolutely going to have an effect on the port timing. But you're a 2-stroke.
I wouldn't. That, 2-stroke tuning gets to be like running on a knife edge.
It's
like
It's different.
well, he's really
yeah, that's a demonstration of it right there.
Yeah.
Right? You've either got it right or you haven't, and there's nothing like nearly having it right.
Tony, how did you figure out the fuel motors that you were getting detonation at bottom dead center, so you needed to change the exhaust timing?
I fought with so many people about that when I first discovered it. There was a series of evolutionary steps that cars were going through, and it was the difference between a 5/8 crank and a 3/4 inch crank. So 4.375 versus 4.50, right? With the same length connecting rod. So and the same fuel system. So when this change was being made, this evolutionary step, the leaders in that field, it was mostly Dale Armstrong and who was that guy? Ken Meany. The people who were pushing this movement knew what was going on. The rest of us didn't. So when they went to that 3/4 inch stroke crank, they went to the smaller bore, the longer stroke, kept the fuel system, but they changed cam timing. Now none of us knew what was going on. So everybody in the back half of the pack was blowing up shit like crazy. So make a long story short, during this period of time, okay, so you're familiar with the witness marks at the top of the combustion chamber, right? On top of the cylinder wall. So you know the ridge that you get at the top of the cylinder, right? Where the piston reverses and starts moving out. Well, those marks are not from the rings themselves, but they're from the combustion event, the pressure pushing out on the ring into the cylinder wall.
Right.
And that's why it only wears at the top and not at the bottom. Because if you think about it, the change of direction happens on your regular engine. The change of direction happens at the bottom of the stroke, same as the top. Well, why do you only have those marks at the top?
Yeah.
Well, when we started having this
That's
detonation issue, I started finding those witness marks from the rings at the bottom of the board.
And that told you.
That told me that was the story right there. So with that, we advanced the cam a lot, like 6 degrees.
Yeah.
Probably. And you would think, because it was a detonation problem, you would think advancing the cam's going to increase cylinder pressure. Yeah. Well, it wasn't if someone was going faster.
It would live.
I have never heard of this. I've learned something tonight.
Honestly, Danny, we only went as fast as we did with the old combination, but at least it stopped destroying itself everywhere.
I think running a fuel motor is almost a different world.
It is.
It was a unique place.
Is this 318 going to run hot? No.
Harry, when am I going to end a public apology to Doug Dutra? What did I do to Doug Dutra?
Where
Harry says, you just have fun. You freaked me out, Harry. I thought I slighted Doug Dutra somehow.
Hey, Eric. Good to see you, buddy. That's pretty good stuff.
No, we're going to run. We might as well talk about water temperature, right?
Yeah.
About 170 is the optimum temperature, taking into account all the things, right? If it's economy you're looking for, 170 is about it.
Yeah.
Right? I say about because it depends where you take the temperature. If you're looking for horsepower, 170 is about it.
It's the best
If
all
you're
around.
looking for your heater to run, okay, 170 is about it, right? So we're going to target a thermostat that opens at about 168.
And that's something like when I go drag racing, when we were running Performance Street together,
Yep.
I always pull into the water box at 160, and by the time I'm at the line, it's right at about 170. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, what was it with Jenkins? Because the thing that stuck in my head when I was a teenager and I read Jenkins' book.
Yeah.
I read his books too. I read you
Yeah.
So the thing that always stuck in my mind was that the slow head temperature was he wanted to see 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which was being simply boiling point in water. And he said that's where they made the best power.
There was probably not sufficient atomization in the fuel. Grumpy took me out for lunch or dinner 2 or 3 times, right? And I learned a lot from him, especially about rings, gas porting, etc. But you know what? It was a two-way street, right? I fixed Grumpy up on 2 items, and he called me back. He says, "You're right. We make all this." Right. So, hey guys, figure if I can tell Grumpy Jenkins 2 moves to increase the power. Oh, by the way, this is the interesting thing. When I met Grumpy socially, now at the track, he was just how he got the name Grumpy. I don't know. The last thing he was Grumpy. He was great fun.
People ask me about now you know him a lot better than I did. I only met him a couple of times.
I only met him a couple of times, but it was a one-on-one deal. So we spent probably 3 hours talking race cars.
The thing with him was that if he was working on something,
Leave me alone.
Right? He's like, he's doing this, okay, and you say, "Hey, Grumpy, are you going to use that one or the other one?" There'll be a pause, right? there'd be applause, and you think he's blowing you off, but he didn't blow you off. He was actually coming up with an answer that you could understand.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
took that as being grumpy,
Yeah.
but he wasn't grumpy. He was anything but
Alright.
grumpy.
I had a great deal of respect for the guy, right? I mean, when I say I passed him some information that worked, well, he had a lot more to tell me, especially about pistons and rings, right?
He was like the first with the gas port. Right?
Yeah.
That's back around
He was.
1871.
Yeah, yep. That's when I found out about it, from Grumpy, right? I think it was 72 actually. I found out about it.
That's good stuff right there.
Now, the whole purpose of gas porting, what we were talking about the nitro motors and the witness marks at the top of the bores. Well, with the gas porting, what you're doing is you're giving the pressure a more direct shot. So instead of the pressure having to go around the top of the piston and then come around the ring and then push out that way, the gas porting gives a straight, direct shot at the pressure. And at higher RPM, you need the more direct shot because of the time, the smaller window of time that compression event takes.
Yeah, when Lake Speed Jr. was on Drag Boss Garage, he was talking about Total Seal's gas ported rings. They make a ring now that is,
Specifically for the gas port.
no, it's got a gas port
No,
cut in the ring.
It's
Really?
It's a radial gas port.
Yeah.
That's what's in mixed up boss.
Really?
Yeah. So like, what's happened is he explained the evolution. He said the problem with the gas ports on the top of the piston. He said it's a short-lived deal because it carbons up.
Right.
You know, the holes will carbon up and then the gains
Yeah,
go
it's like
away.
a street engine.
Then they started gas porting the top of the ring land above the ring.
Okay.
That was the next evolution. And now they make a ring that has a little U channel cut in the top of the upper ring. About 15 different U-shaped channels in the upper ring.
I don't think you don't have one of those here, do you?
No, but we will do.
We had one.
We're probably going to put them in your motor. But here's another Total Seal deal here, right? They've got a ring which has got, imagine a ring like that. They've got knife-like razor slits in the ring,
Yeah.
right? So that it can, there's only about that much of the ring that's not flexible, right? So let me tell you how well it works. I think it will seal up with a square bore.
Yeah, it's crazy
Right.
good.
And I have not tested Total Seal's version, but we did a crude version of that on my British Touring Car Championship car back in '74. And we picked up, I think it was 3 or 4 horsepower. Now, bearing in mind, this is only a 1600cc 4-cylinder engine. Think about this. If we picked up 3 horsepower and you pick up 6 on a V8, right? Just for a change of rings, that seems a pretty good deal to me,
Yeah.
right? And here's something to consider. Right, one of the worst engines for getting sealed up is the small block Ford.
It is. It is.
Bores
horrible.
are so flexible.
They move around ungodly.
That's what we're going to use in all of our builds for small block Ford, because I know that even the bores will go out of ring by as much as 2 thousandths during operation. It'll seal.
Well, you know that when they 1/2 and 3/4 fill those blocks, they just split like potatoes.
Yeah. That's why for my engine, I just did an aftermarket block. You know.
You can get a small block Ford to take power, but
It
it's
takes a lot of
I've
work.
got one here that I'm going to turbo. It's done for me by Checkered Flag, and I've got a video of my new YouTube thing coming out. It's going to be called the 1,000 horsepower Ford block.
Yeah.
So look out for that.
Mr. Swinger, if you guys can get a 318 to run like a 340, you will have succeeded in what Chrysler engineers did back in the 60s when they mounted the 318 and came over the 340.
Well,
We're
we're
going to
just.
hear that?
Hey, look, what we're doing is what's been done for the past 75 years in racing, and that's using your brain instead of just picking up a catalog, buying parts. Okay. Sometimes you have to think outside the box in order to make power, especially when you're drag racing or you're doing any kind of racing and you've got a certain set of rules. You've got to think outside that boundary.
You know, the thing about the 318 and the 340
Not that
is
much
it's close, but it's not like the 340 is a modified 318. The 340 actually has its own architecture.
Right.
That means saddles are actually
Different.
taller. The bore, the 4-inch plus 340, the 4-inch plus 40 bore is 4.040 is the maximum width of the combustion chamber. So you can get the 202. The only reason they went to the 4-inch plus 40 bore was so that it could fit the 202-inch the intake valve in there and not have a shroud.
Right.
So the combustion chamber width on a 340, 360 is wider than it is on a 318. There's actually a lot of small subtle differences. So you can't really say that the 340 is a modified 318. But that's besides the point. Chrysler never did it with that little pimple of a carburetor.
No.
The whole idea, it's an exercise. It's an exercise about thinking, about that. And that's what he does, thinks.
Yeah. That's all he does all day long.
All he does, and so now let's see what thought processes go into making something like this work. And then all of this is applicable to any other engine.
Shop 209. Use every trick in the book except indexing spark plugs. I'll never do that again, no matter what the game. But sometimes you have to make it clear the piston.
On some, that's right.
Some crazy combinations.
Wait a minute. Why did the overhead valve design never really catch? They're all overhead design.
Oh, yeah. Maybe he's talking about overhead cam.
Yeah, you must mean overhead cam, right? Because other than the Ford camera, that's about it, isn't it?
Which never really made it.
Yeah.
Like that was
Yeah. The thing about it is overhead cams are exotic, more expensive to produce. Yeah, it's got less parts in it, but you can do everything with a pushrod engine.
the overhead cam, yes. Because the RPM range that American engines don't
Yeah.
benefit from the lightened valve frame.
Yeah. Now I do love the 2-valve mod motor. I'm in love with that thing, but it had to grow on me over years.
But okay, nobody has ever once, right, factually, watched two cars go down a drag strip in one wing and say, that's because it had overhead cams.
No.
Right?
No.
That has never happened in the history of, right? You could make it up, that, oh yeah, well, I have one because I had overhead cams. But there is no factual, there's never, I can absolutely guarantee, there's never been a case in human history where on a drag strip, one car got to the finish line before the other because it had overhead cams.
When I had Sam Oxier Jr. on my channel, he said we had cylinder heads that was good for 12,000 RPMs on a 9,000 RPM short block. He said it was just kind of, the answer to the question nobody ever asked.
Yeah, this business of having one compression ring and one oil ring, right? It's a little more subtle than just eliminating a ring.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to have good crankcase evacuation. Everything has to be just right for the compression ring, right? And
The
it's
surface of the bore has to be perfect.
and you have no second chances. Now, that's not to say that it's impractical, but you better know exactly
What you're
it
doing.
needs, because again, it's one of those things where, and a knife edge might be too specific there, but you are almost walking on a knife edge. I've done 2-ring builds, and I think I probably had to pull them apart 3 or 4 times
Yeah.
and get them to work. And I had access to ring specialists, right? I think it's going to be easier now with the top rings gas ported and slit,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the way to go. If you pull 15 inches of mercury vacuum on the crankcase, you're in
Good shape.
good shape, yeah.
What about the stability of having that second ring in there? Doesn't that do anything to it?
If Yes. The second ring can be very functionally, add to having the function of the piston easier, right? If you're gonna have a single ring piston, you do need to have a slightly different skirt shape for it. Right, it needs to be a little bit bigger at the top.
Let's see here.
There.
Let's see here. I would have loved to seen the quad overhead cam 426 Hemi finished.
Now,
I think that would have been interesting.
Well, it's still
what do I
good.
think of Ben Alameda's video? Well, I haven't seen that. But they're worth
I don't
seeing.
know what he's talking about. About head stuff?
Yeah.
The
Doomsday.
Doomsday, I mean, well, remember, that's a different environment. That's,
Yeah.
because now you're talking about sustained 7,500 RPM, 8,000 RPM use, which is what they had in mind there, right?
Yeah.
Which now you're getting to like really exotic stuff. In drag racing, the RPM doesn't.
I will say this, I think it would have been a game changer because back then, engine failures in NASCAR were, I mean, a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? It happened quite frequently because
You get 3 or 4 cars drop out.
and you're trying to run 7,500 RPMs with stock valve train.
Or tree
Because
trunks for connecting rods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that there, they could have run really like valve train components and
Yes.
it would have lived at higher RPM,
Yes.
more sustained. So the ball stud Hemi, I think that was just a compromise.
The Boston Hemi is a big block Chevy.
Yeah,
That's all it is. It's a deep skirted big block Chevy.
it's a cheaper version to do the same thing.
Look at the combustion chamber, look at the valve angles, look at everything, and it's a big block Chevy. Is all it is.
Yeah,
The same way the Chrysler wedge motor is a small block Chevy,
yeah,
right? The B motor, BRB motor is literally an exact copy, cylinder head wise, of the original small block Chevy head. And then
But
the
actually,
bottom
it has some advantages over the small block Chevy.
on the big block,
The small block
the small
Chrysler.
block more Chrysler.
head, if we're sticking to a certain year, I think it's the later, remember the Formula 5000 cars
Right.
could only use stock iron heads.
Yeah, but I'm
Because
talking about the big block.
He's talking
Oh,
Right.
okay, didn't catch that. I'm busy reading what they're saying there.
But yeah, the
Yes, Shop 209, you're right.
the B motor is an exact core.
it's a scaled up version of small block Chevy.
Well, it's an FE skirted bottom end with a small block Chevy head.
Yeah, you're right.
Iceman,
Tony, this is your reported vacuum. Well, right immediately after this, we're supposed to go front and fight to the death over that.
Yeah,
And
You
the
didn't know that.
survivor, right? Yeah,
wins.
but the survivor wins, and then from that point forward, all time
It's
will
all
either
settled.
be vacuum or
I like it.
unless I say otherwise.
We'll have a duel
I-
out in the
I
backyard.
thank you.
Yeah, no. But
That's
we're not,
funny.
if we're gonna have a fight, we're not doing it your way.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Right.
right. So we know that you
He's gonna have
got
a death throw or
we're-
something.
We're gonna use
probably.
a leaded method, right? Take your pick. You're gonna have a 44 Magnum or a 45 Colt 45. I could even let you have a Navy 36 if you like, and your holster and everything else.
Oh, don't forget the survivor gets thrown under the bus.
Yeah, I was looking for some North Carolina buses while I was here to try to take. I'm gonna take measure out in the truck
Okay,
just because in case I came across a new type of bus.
that would be a good thing.
They haven't
I'll get up
flown in.
underneath it.
Yeah. Fucking idiots.
Crazy. Let's see here. Sean, I don't know what you asked. I would just ask Darren Morgan instead. I don't see what he said. So what's your itinerary now? What's your game plan, Tony?
Head back to
the great state of Tennessee?
Yes.
Well, for your reference, about 6 miles past the Tennessee line, if you pull over on I-40, you might be able to find part of my connecting rod.
Where that let go.
I bet you will find that scat connecting rod laying out there still.
He was coming out to my neck and was to ambush me.
Yeah. See, this race between me and Tony's been
This
2
goes back a long
years
way.
in the making.
He was on his path to ambush me, and karma got you.
It did. Karma spoke loud and clear. And it's taken me this long to get my jump back together.
Well, the bus is a different color up there. I don't know. I haven't been here in the daylight. I
It's
know
all
it's dark already,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, I don't know what color are the buses here.
School bus yellow.
No, okay.
What do
I've been able to identify them. Wait, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't think you guys would actually have to go under a bus.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
does Stevie recall the dual concentric probe?
DB's being
Yeah,
serious.
yeah, I
What is it?
sold the right to make the Tomoroso.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't think either of these guys would actually end up under a bus because the last I checked, they're both actually intelligent, articulate, hardworking people that have their egos in check.
Can I have that in writing?
No.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was any room under the bus for actual people like this. Only ones who pretend and.
Well, there's no room for Andy under the bus.
Definitely not. Definitely not. It'd be more like climbing a mountain if you tried to hit me.
Did I drive the XJ or the Carry-Van? You know too much about me, man.
Man,
The XJ.
he's got a GPS on your ride out there.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
That's just stuff that makes you just want to stop doing YouTube.
Yeah.
You know what I drove?
What kind of shoes do you have on, Tony? People with foot fetishes and all kinds of crazy. Do you believe, New Guy's Garage, do you believe that air rushing under the car at high speeds would have any sort of siphoning effect on the exhaust? Could you possibly influence it too? Talk about cutting car.
Very minorly,
Yeah.
right? There's too much emphasis put on trying to add an extraction method at the end of the exhaust pipe.
Yeah.
Any efforts you put into it there will serve you better to try and do something to enhance the intake because it's about 10 times more responsive. So the exhaust exit at the end of the pipe is got to be one of the last places you'll look for improvement. You need to do it up front, right?
One thing that I do plan on doing on the chassis dyno with Casper down the road is putting Terminator boxes on the exhaust.
We'll have to build some sturdy ones because I found
Pretty much what a Terminator box does is it's like an open resonant chamber, and when you put it in the exhaust pipe, it makes the engine think that the end of the collector is right there. The engine doesn't see the rest of the exhaust. So it makes it a free flow type deal.
I think I could picture that.
I can draw one out.
and
Well,
you're going to make them stronger than I make them. Mine fall apart because the resonance.
the thing about airflow under a car is that it's so different depending on the type of car and the speed.
Yeah.
Now, like I'll give you an example of extreme, all right? So on a top fuel car, the air underneath actually moves backwards. So it's hard to picture. You've got a car moving forward at 300 miles an hour, and the air up top is moving at 300 miles an hour, but the air underneath the car is stagnant to forward moving. And I found this by looking at leaks. You'll find leaks after a run. So you have a fuel leak, an oil leak, you have a leak.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find that the streaks all head forward
instead of
backwards.
wow.
So it just depends on the type of car and the speed involved and the ground clearance and everything else. So to say, what would work as let's say a collector enhancement device,
Yeah.
right? Would be different from car to car, from speed to speed, from engine to
Right.
Hey, look,
What you looking at? Oh,
they were trying to drill gun cam loads and if it was worth anything. There's several engines where we used hollow cams, right? But that was not anything else.
let's see here.
TV watching your exhaust video, it seemed that for a 353 under 6,000 would be better with 5-inch than 3/4 direct beat type application. For a 350, you easily get to that point where you're on that transient point between the 1/5/8 being best and 1 3/4 being.
Depends on how much power it's making.
Yeah. And at about 500-ish is the crossover point, right? But this is why we have Dynos to check that out.
Yeah.
I tend to try and use 1 5/8 as much as possible because that's the common size.
They fit better.
Yeah.
Everything about it.
And the other thing is most of my builds, I like them. It doesn't matter how much power they make. I like them to be a pull from nothing.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Wait. Rebuild a 700R4 versus my turbo. Let me tell you, those gear vendor overdrive units, the engineering in them is awesome. I have never rotated a gearbox as it is that runs that free. It's incredible. But as to which is best, I don't know. It's almost anyone's guess. So I put the 700R4 and the gear vendors thingy. Is that a real word?
Sean
Tis
was
It is
saying-
now.
Yeah, Sean was saying, did I not see his question again? Well, we've been
Well, what
talking.
are the cost difference between a gear vendor setup
Oh, yeah,
and a
absolutely.
700R4?
Have you used one? I've never had one of my own, but I've driven vehicles with them in. You switch it over and it's like engine RPM just vanishes.
Oh, sure. But what's the cost of them compared to, let's say, an overdrive?
You've got to want one.
You're gonna really want one.
It's.
Okay.
I'll tell you what though. One guy told me he's got one of those gear vendors overdrives on his RV.
Yeah.
This is the best thing he ever did. Right.
So
you get on
Sean-
a flat road and that's it.
Sean's been asking this question. Said, I asked you guys if you had any insight into using the Coanda effect for Coanda effect for managing airspeed over a short term.
I've never heard of that.
Now go back down again. Sean, this Coanda effect, right? It has got to be one of the most overrated things. I have tried using it because it looks like a free issue towards more horsepower, and
Well, describe
doesn't
what it
live
is,
up to
because
the
I've never
hype.
heard of it. Neither of us.
Yeah.
well,
Explain what it is.
There's several designs. The effect is to try and speed up the air to form like a lower pressure that sucks the exhaust out. So.
That's a short thing.
Yeah.
Well, most of them I've seen have been in like collector forms on the exhaust, right? But as for putting one in a port, I don't think that's practical if that's what Sean meant.
That's what he was asking.
Yeah, he was asking that. Okay. Gear vendors is cheaper than a good overdrive and converter if you're making a bunch of power. That's true. Like if you're making thousands,
Yeah.
horsepower, you want, like say a turbo 400 or a glide with that gear vendor. Getting a 700R4 to live at those kind of power levels is good luck with that.
Now, is Daniel Wilson here? Daniel, are you talking about the Chrysler oiling system?
No, he's talking about the Cleveland, which is.
Oh, yes, sorry,
The Cleveland oiling system has a bunch of issues. If you want to learn about that, is go over to Drag Boss. I mean, he is a Cleveland guru.
our crankcase vacuum cup's worth it. Well, I'd have to say, if you're a racer, right, you spend the money for one regardless of how much power you get per dollar spent. But here's the thing. When I was dynoing my Chrysler engine, there I'm pulling about 19 inches of vacuum. Every time I stepped up until I got to about 18 inches, it made more horsepower. I can't remember how much, but it was a fairly sizable chunk, like 10 or 12 horsepower. Now, I was working with some guys on a Steve Schmidt motor where we could vary the vacuum. And that was a 1300 horsepower engine. And we went up and down on that, and the more vacuum we gave it, the more power it made. I can't remember how much, but it was, I think, at the worst end of the scale when we were at 15 to when we went up to 22 was, on that engine, something like 18 horsepower.
Yeah.
Right? And I got to tell you, while we were dynoing this engine, let me tell you, Steve Schmidt knows how to build big blocks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk about being impressed. I've built a lot of big blocks. That guy built this engine. It was freaking magnificent. We did the equivalent of I don't know how many drag strip passes, maybe 150. And his last run made the most horsepower.
Yeah. One thing I do want to do is I want to give a shout out to Just Mopar Joe.
Just Mopar Joe.
For sending me the carburetor, and I've got a stock 318 camshaft and another camshaft over here. So thank you, Mopar Joe, for doing that. So let's see here.
Wood drilling holes close to the head. Ah, Ricky, right. Let me tell you something here. And this came straight from Smokey Unit when I was talking to him. Right? He drilled those holes so that he could see the color of the flame to know what the mixture distribution was. They did not contribute anything to power. In fact, with holes like that drilled in the system, I have seen a drop in power, a quite substantial one. Now, like I said, the reason Smokey did those holes was to check out the mixture, right? When it's lean or coming up to just chemically correct fuel air ratio, it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as it goes rich, which is about 14:1, maybe a little bit more, it will go orange, and it makes that transition pretty good. Flame color will go orange, yeah. So when it's blue, it's lean to right. When it goes orange, it's rich. So he would find where the lean bit was and jet it a couple of sizes bigger, right? And that usually put him very quickly in the right region, but also it allowed him to stagger jet to get the.
Yeah, Tim at Drag Boss Garage is an excellent source on reliable Cleveland information. 100%. I mean, I watch his stuff, man, and I can't wait to see what he does with that Pro Stock Cleveland that he's built. See, that's the stuff I love. I mean, like Tim, he's got this vintage Pro Stock engine build that he's doing. I love to see that stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Andy can't wait to see Casper run. Love the engine build. And my Maverick needs Hemi heads. Yep.
Justin Billington there.
Is there much difference between a car BBD 1.25 and 1.5 horsepower? Well, I mean, is there the throttle blade size? Yeah, it would be pretty substantial.
Yeah.
But the BB that 1.5 the 1.5 BBD would be the one you'd find on 360 383, 400, that's
Yeah.
the big 2-barrel one. It won't directly bolt to that manifold, but I do have one. If you want to
It
try
has a bigger spread bolt
Yeah.
pattern. Yeah. Shop 209. I want to see a DV shirt that says, "I don't have an opinion, I have a dyno." You need to make a shirt, David.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
That should be the light of the, like,
Your
the
first
description of
t-shirt.
your channel.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, Tony?
I love it.
It's suiting for you.
I love it. Although, what's his face has already been using that.
What?
What's his face has been using that.
Who?
Holdner.
Holdner.
Yeah, he dropped that on me on a live once. I don't have an opinion. I have a Dyno.
Oh.
Well,
He stole it from David. 'Cause
I
David
must
was saying
have
it
given
longer.
it to him because it originated with my late and very good friend Roger Helgeson, commonly known as Dr.
Yeah.
Air. Right? His picture's up on the wall over there.
Where?
The back of that.
Oh.
Yeah, over there.
You've got to look that way.
So we're going close to 2 hours. How much longer do you want to go, Tony?
I'm
You're good.
it's up to David.
What do you think, David?
Well, let's give it a little longer. I'm
Okay.
hanging in there, okay? These guys are asking some really nice questions, right?
Deep
I just
questions.
can't keep up with them. Right now, what's this one here about? There, that one there. My question, if I advance the camera with 112 loops to 107, will I get the same benefits? Total power?
No,
No.
no. That is two separate things. You're saying LSA and LCA, that's the same thing. You're talking about intake center line. Okay, that is completely different.
Well, say it's the advanced.
Yeah.
Wait.
LCA
Yeah.
and LCA are the same thing.
Yes. Here's
Explain
the deal.
it, David.
Here's the deal, guys. Right? Over here in the US, it's called the load separation angle. And in England, it's most commonly called the load centerline angle. And my mouth is in sync with the English one because that's what I was brought up on.
Yeah, but we won the war. We won the war.
David's thinking, he's like, okay.
We let you win it. Did you know how many British soldiers deserted and fought on the other side? You know, well, this is another thing altogether. I am really ticked off by the way that the British government and the King handled that. Right? England and America could have been the greatest alliance
Yeah.
ever created on the face of this planet. There would be no World War II or World War I.
For that matter.
Or
Yeah.
almost all the wars that ever happened could have been stopped by the force of England and America combined if we were one society. You know, I think this is what should have happened. I'm going to sew it up here. The King should have established a residence over in the US and treated those settlers as if they were absolutely identical to the ones in England. In fact, they're breaking ground. They're doing jobs for him. He shouldn't attack them. He should have funded them to do it. Right? There
Tony,
was
when you left
really-
the house this morning, did you have an idea that we would be talking about this tonight?
It goes all over the place.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say it was the
I-
Bank of
I-
England that was the troublemaker.
It's almost whatever you say on the War of Independence, I'm going to agree with it because America should have done what they did, and England should pay the price for it. It was totally mishandled at the time, and I just can't understand how anyone could be so stupid. Right?
Blame the city of London.
Well, the city of London isn't the source of it, it's the guys that live there,
Well,
Yeah.
right? And that's where the seat of government was. I mean, they were exploiting the US just to line their own pocket.
Well,
Yeah.
the city of London is no more part of England than DC is part of the United States. They're separate, and the Vatican is part of
Well,
Italy.
Anyway,
There's separate city-states that force wars all over the planet all the time. But let's.
unfortunately, you've got too many ingots of truth in there, and I hate to say this, I'll say one last word on that, right? And this upsets me greatly. I'm the member of a race of pigs that nailed a guy to a cross who was totally innocent. Right? And I feel bad about that, although I wasn't there. Nearly, but not quite. Right? Just think about it. We are not, as a race of pigs, we're not that good.
No.
And we need to try and get better at being a race of good pigs.
I heard us referred to as warring naked apes.
we're de-evolving. We are de-evolving.
Well, I don't know. In that area, we haven't evolved very much,
Yeah.
right? Anyway,
Let's get back
Listen,
to it.
this is not imperialistic advice. Jason Fitch wins the internet for the day.
That's right. Lawrence is saying,
Here's why I still do YouTube.
right,
That's
right.
it.
Lawrence is saying, Andy, would you consider a Crown Vic front end to make it easier to put headers on? No. Because once you put that Crown Vic front end in there, it changes.
It's not.
It's not the same Casper, you know. Every F100 has a Crown Vic front end in there now.
Yeah.
It's like,
No,
They do?
Casper's.
no, I do not. I do not.
no, I did.
And you know what the
I
thing
have
about
never heard of that. How did I miss out on that?
Oh, it's simple mod to do.
Cameron Hedayat, have you guys seen what's going on with Ed Pink's shop in Los Angeles?
Yeah,
I watched that video.
I did too.
Oh,
It's sad.
what a shame. What a shame. That should be a historic spot.
It should be.
Wait a
And
minute.
make bus stations, no
Okay.
less.
Now, has anything happened to Ed Pink?
No, he's still around.
Right? Because sometimes I miss these things.
He's older than you.
Yeah.
No one's older than.
No, Ed Pink is older than you. He's like
Yes, he is.
83, maybe 4.
Yeah, he's at least 10 years older than me.
Let's see here. Ricky Folks. When are annular boosters better? When the intake's cool. Cool running intakes. Like tunnel ramps.
Ricky Phillips. When are annular
Yeah.
boosters?
Yeah.
He's
better?
into it.
Annular, so long as they're set up and you know they're delivering finer droplets of fuel, annular boosters work very well in a cold situation. If you try running them, but let's say you're running a track like Daytona, but it's in New York, and you run that track in cold weather, the annular booster will go faster. If you run that same booster down in Florida, you're going to go slower.
All right, we're coming up on what? Now we're getting closer to.
Yeah. Ready to count?
Yeah, let's talk about it shortly.
Alright.
Dave,
So,
take a couple of good ones, man.
Cunningham or whatever it is, yes, you can.
yeah, champering the throttle.
Yeah, you can go a lot further than that, though, which will
Knife
demonstrate.
edge.
Yeah.
Here's your good one. South Jersey Gym. If camshaft design should be predicated upon LCA for a given block and head combination, is the LCA established without regard to ramp rates?
Yes. The
Yes.
load center line angle is dependent on a number of things.
Yeah.
It's not a fixed entity for one particular engine. It varies, and the trick to know how much it varies by. If you have a starting point like my 128 formula, what that does is it gives you the number for a 10.5 to 1 350 Chevy with 2.02 intake valve or 1.6 exhaust, which is a very common build. That formula gives you that for that spec of engine. If you change anything in the valve sizes, in the displacement, in the rocker ratios and several other things, then in my book, How to Build Horsepower, it tells you how much to alter it by.
Right.
So let's say when you build let's say you've got your 10.5 to 1 street motor and you think, oh, I want to make it 13.5 to 1. Well, now you get that 128 formula, work out what it was for 10.5, then you look up in my book how much to adjust it by for the 13 to 1.
Right.
Right? So you do that. Then you go to the rockers. Well, that rocker set up for that 10.5 to 1 was a true 1.52, right? We'll say 1.5. Now, when you go to a 1.6 rocker, you have to make an allowance for that. So that changes the load potential line. Then if you put all your head and intake and rockers onto a 383, now you've got to allow for its being 33 cubic inches bigger, right? So it's not fixed. The 128 formula is the middle of the road. That's the white line, right? It only works with one engine, but there's corrections for any other one. It goes either side of that white line. Right now, this is what people are overlooking. I've had people say, well, I traded that 128 formula on my big block Chevy, and it came up with a ridiculous number. Well, of course it will. Because a big block Chevy isn't a small block. It's not a 350. And it probably didn't have a 10.5 to 1, right? There's a different number for a big block.
Yeah.
132.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, every time I've used it, it works just as, like David says it does.
Yeah. Well, look, let me make one point clear here. Those of you who are more advanced in years will know I've been around a long time, right? I've got a lot of experience. One thing that I do is, because I don't have an opinion, I have a dyno, right? And I'm able to break down that information from that dyno very well, because I
You know what? That's the other part of it.
Yeah.
You
You're
have to
right.
know that you have to know what information you're getting on it.
Yes, and a lot of people don't absorb flow bench or dyno test theory. Now here's the point, right? Mr. Dyno, I turn it into some kind of mathematical formula. In the 54 years I've been doing this, I have never given out information that didn't work. Just as I say, right? Now, let me tell you something about guys who contradict what I say. Again, they need to remember this is not my opinion. It's do this
Years
and it will work like this, right? My goal is to try and do all the homework and use all the expensive equipment that you guys can't get a hold of. I mean, at one time, my shop in California had this is 1987. It had $250,000 worth of equipment to do nothing other than test engines. That's why GM came to me. At that time, I could do tests they couldn't, right? They can now, but
Yeah.
So, trust me on this. I've never been found to be, I've never had a letter from somebody it didn't work. But boy, I sure have got lots of letters and communications saying it worked just like you said.
Hey, you know the TV commercial? I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two.
Right.
That's him. You know? So, guys, we are coming up on 2 hours. It's been fun sitting here talking with Tony. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to meet.
Yeah.
It's a wizard.
Yeah.
A wizard.
Yeah, it's Vizard actually, but nobody knows. The dog did. Right?
So-
now, can I say a few words here?
What?
Right, one of the things that is a great help to me is the fact that I have got two guys here, not one, two guys who can, when I get to a blank spot, they sure can fill in. These guys here, especially I've not worked with Tony except on
Live
channel,
chats.
right? But the point of the matter is these guys support me there. I'm nowhere near as good without them. And
Wow.
one last point, which I've now forgotten. Oh yeah, the other thing is we are getting much more, how shall I say, technically
Savvy.
thought out.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. See,
That's
you
what-
just proved my point.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Guys,
But-
unfortunately, we can't answer all those questions
No.
as fast as you come up with them. That,
If
you
we
know
didn't
what that
get to
means?
it, we're
We
sorry.
got a better audience than you've got presenters, right? So you win.
Yeah.
So
So
with that-
you watch the comments, the trolls, they're like, Tony wouldn't give David a chance to talk, he was stepping all over him.
bull crap.
No,
Whatever.
Wow.
actually,
No.
I think that I may have been doing more talking than I should.
No, man.
Before we started the broadcast, these guys came up with some interesting issues with this project, right? And as a consequence, I was somewhat fired up the moment
Oh, yeah.
it switched on, right?
So with that, I want to thank each and every one of y'all for coming to the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Everybody, please leave a like. Make
Yeah.
sure you leave a like there.
Oh, and I need subscribers,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah, David needs subscribers.
Don't
Don't leave this here right now without going
Go
over
on
to David and subscribing
That's
to David.
David Vizard, not David Vizard Performance.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear. David
David
Vizard.
Vizard. Now I'm
Yeah.
rebooting the channel because
Yeah.
I cannot get into my old one because it was in Marvin's name,
Yeah.
and we need a telephone number that is non-existent now.
Yeah.
So without a court
Yeah,
deal
that's a whole
and
bit.
death certificates and that, so I thought, to hell with it, I'll start another channel.
With
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
good night, y'all. Thank
Yeah,
y'all
thank
so
you,
much.
everybody.
Thank everybody
Good
who donated the super chat. Appreciate that. And we will catch you later.
I need smoke.